This is my new Reverend signature guitar, the Gristle Master. The whole process started off with me developing some pickups with Fishman. I got approached by them, I don't know, about 7 years ago now, and they had access to a new technology to kind of do some things with pickups that had never been done before. Not to bore you with all of the ins and outs of it, but it's not like a modeling technology. It's just they use something different from, instead of having wound coils, they're actually stacked aerospace circuit boards that the coil is printed on. So then with a preamp, you can make that particular coil sound any way that you want it, and you can have multiple voices. What intrigued me about them is that it met my prerequisite for my dream pickup, something that you wanted to use first and foremost because of the sound, and then it also happened to be noiseless, because it seems like it's always, there's noiseless pickups that sound pretty good, but I wanted it to be the other way around. I wanted pickups that sounded really good and they're noiseless, and then I wanted some kind of incremental boost on the guitar itself. And that kind of checked that box for me, because with this little button, it goes between two voicings. One that's a little bit more vintagey and open sounding, and the second one's got a little bit more punch and a little bit more, mid-range and a little more output. And also, with all my old guitars, I would always I wouldn't do it because I don't work on my guitars because I'm lame that way. As I say, as the youngest of 7 kids, I figured out early on that if you plead ignorance, people will do stuff for you. So that's horrible. Anyway, but I would always say to my guitar techs, can you please do that thing with my volume knob on my Strats and Tellies so that when I turn it down, I don't lose any highs? Because I just wanted to get less loud. Crazy me. So with these pickups, that automatically comes in. So it ticks all the boxes for me. They look normal. In terms of like a Telly neck pickup, I like the look of a Telly neck pickup. It seems like a lot of times if a pickup does something to remove the noise, it always has like ancillary claws and beaks and a variety of other unsightly accoutrements. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but in a perfect world, I wanted a Telly neck pickup to look like a Telly neck pickup. So anyways, no noise, sounds magnificent, no noise, don't lose any highs when I turn on the volume, got a second voice, and they have my name on them, which is even cooler, I think. Well, anyway, so to hear the first position, so without the button pressed in, I'm going into this, we decided to do a kind of a fly rig demo today. So I've got my Gristle King pedal, and I'm just plugged into one of these new Fender Deluxe Tone Master devices. It's my first maiden voyage with this beast. So I got it on about 4.5. I got the treble at 6. I got the bass at 6, and I've got the reverb at about 2.5. So just get a little bit. So that's the neck pickup, which is very dynamically sensitive. If I press that button in, turn the volume down. Middle position sounds great. All right, and bridge pickup. Press the button in. Did you get the idea? So all that stuff is right on board. The reason why we went with the push button is because on most of the Fishman Fluence pickups, to get the second voice, they all have two voices. To get the second voice, usually it's a push-pull pot on the tone control. But I like to do a bunch of stuff on my guitars where I go. I like to do those tone control wahs. All that kind of stuff. So I wanted to make sure that that functionality was not mitigated by any way, shape, and form by a push-pull pot. Not that it necessarily would be, but I just didn't want to take any chances. So Larry Fishman goes, why don't we do a push button here? So that was the start of the guitar, was having these pickups. Now with my Fishman Fluence pickup, it comes with, they're a little bit more dull than the other Fishman Fluence pickups because it comes with all of the hardware. It comes not only with the pickups, but it comes with this assembly. In here, there is a lithium-ion battery that is used to power the preamp that changes the voices and makes the pickups function. Initially, I was like, I don't want a battery in my guitar. They're like, check this out. We'll set you up with a lithium-ion battery and this input jack, which comes with it. There's the input, of course, for the guitar, but there's also a mini USB port or input that you charge up the pickups for an hour and a half and you get 300 hours of plugged-in playing time. So my thought was, wow, if you got a gig longer than 300 hours, you need to seek some new representation because that's just pestilential. You know what I'm saying? And so I change strings after every 2 or 3 gigs anyway. That's nowhere near 300 hours. So when I'm changing strings, I got a gig the next day or whatever, I just fill her up. And there's a little red light that goes on that says, I'm taking in of the sweet juice of power. And then it goes green when it says, I'm up, I'm good. And I've never run out of juice because people have asked, what happens if you run out of power at a gig? And I'm like, well, you're SOL, pal. But what happens when you have a cell phone and it runs out of juice? You cease communicating. So you know what you do? You make sure you got power. And so in this instance, you have 300 frickin' hours to figure it out, okay? Not a big deal. So I had these pickups. There was some thought, initially because my long-standing relationship with Fender, I went over to my buddies at Fender. I said, hey, check these pickups out. Maybe we do a guitar. What do you think? They said, no way, old man, you're out. So I was like, okay, whatever. I can take it. I had a good run with the Big F, so nothing personal. So then after a period of time, my buddy Larry Fishman said, hey, Trevor Wilkinson made a guitar with your pickups in it. See what you think. And I really liked that guitar. So initially we were going to do something with Fret King, but for one reason or another, that didn't work out. So then more period went by. And I was going to do something with my friends at Wildwood, which I still shoot videos. Actually, I'll be out there again in 2 weeks. I go out there 4 days a month shooting videos for Wildwood for various different glorious instruments out there in beautiful Louisville, Colorado. And we were maybe going to do a special run of Fender Custom Shop instruments and put my pickups in. But there was more red tape with that. It was becoming kind of it's like, you know, it wasn't happening. Let's just put it that way. And then I started conversing with my buddy Ken from Reverend. I met Ken Haas. From him coming out to Wildwood to do many different video shoots for Reverend, bringing a bunch of their different artists out, and we've just been chummy for a long time. He's a similar height as myself. He's got 4 kids. He plays in a band. We have similar senses of humor, and we live in the Midwest. So there's a lot of people think that we're related in some weird way, shape, and form, which is probably not out of the realm of possibility. But be that as it may, we started shooting the breeze. And one of the things that Reverend always does, they always have these festive parties at NAMM, at, you know, Summer NAMM and at Winter NAMM. And I thought, I want to play at a party. So I was talking to Ken. I go, Ken, I want to play your party. He's like, well, there's a problem. You don't play a Reverend guitar. And I said, well, what if we take one of those Pete Anderson Eastsider guitars and pop some of my pickups in there? What do you think about that? He's like, cool. Why don't you have the Fishman folks send me some of the pickups and we'll see what happens. So Fishman sent them some of my pickups. He calls me up because these pickups sound unbelievable. I'm like, right? I know. That's why I'm playing them. So then he set me up with that Eastsider and I started gigging with that guitar. And I was kind of astounded that, you know, a lot of the instruments I play are a lot of money because they're custom shop and whatever else instrument. And I thought, here's a guitar that's, you know, made in South Korea. And it's a, you know, extremely affordable instrument, and it sounds magnificent. Intonation's great, stays in tune. It can take my farm animal abuse. You know, I do things to a guitar that most people wouldn't do to a farm animal, I'd like to think. And that sounded weird. Anyway, so I thought, wheels started rolling a little bit, and then Ken told me, he's like, look, Joe Naylor and I have been talking, and if you'd be interested in doing a guitar, we'd be totally interested. No pressure because we're buddies. And so then we started talking about doing something. And basically, initially I said, well, let's just take an E-sider, change the neck profile, maybe do some different colors, put a different bridge on there, pop my pickups in, and we're done. He's like, well, we can do whatever you want. So then I thought, well, what I always wanted, and I remember back in the day I said to the Fender folks, I was like, can you make me a guitar that's just slightly larger? Because I'm 6'7", and everyone's always saying, your guitar looks like a ukulele. Is that a 3/4 size guitar? Blah, 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 blah. They're always making jokes. And I said, no, I'm just a big fella. So I wanted a guitar that was just slightly larger. So this is actually like 2 or 3% larger all the way around. If you put it right next to a regular Tele, it would be a very subtle difference, but it's just a little bit bigger, and with the binding, it looks more proportionate to a larger individual. But it's not so large that it's not, it's too big for other conventional guitar cases and stuff like that. There's no problems with that. It's just that it's a little bit larger to give the illusion that it's more proportionate to the larger individual. And then this middle section here that's raised, I had this guitar that I bought from a guy out in California, Ventura County Guitars. He made a kind of a cool Firebird looking thing with tele controls and a bolt-on maple neck, and it was surf green. I had to have it, am I right? So I bought that guitar and I was playing it. It had the Johnny Winter signed, Firebird neck pickup in there, and I was playing it on one of my orange room. Every now and again, I go on Facebook Live. They're really random, but I do these things from my orange room. And I was playing that guitar, and Joe Naylor was tuned in. So when we started talking about this guitar, he's like, what if we did a raised middle section like on that other Firebirdy thing of yours? I said, that'd be totally cool. So not only does it serve a purpose for aesthetics, but the raised aspect of this middle section is actually the conventional width of a T-style guitar, so everything else is recessed, so it kind of worked as weight relief in a way. All these guitars are about a little over 7 pounds, about 7, as I said, a little over 7, and they've been amazingly consistent that way. The body wood is Carina. That's kind of the wood that all of the Reverend guitars are made out of, and I know that there's always spirited discussion online between very interested parties as to, does tone wood make a difference? I think it does. I played a hell of a lot of guitars, and I always kind of gravitate to ash and maple. I like a faster attack. I like bright. I like sizzle. I like sass. Not that I don't like alder and rosewood. It's just that they're a little mellower, and sometimes when I'm playing, I'm like, where am I? How come I'm not, feeling that thing? I think that, in my opinion, again, sorry, picking Jamoke's 354 at AOL.com, who's a little bit mad because I'm talking about tone woods. I think that this particular wood, the Carina, is somewhere just kind of in the middle between ash and alder in terms of tone properties. But you guys can have an internet fight on that. But in my experience, that's what's happening. So it is a Carina body. Initially, we were going for a metal surround on this thing to kind of even milk the Firebirdy thing a little bit. The problem is that the metal material that we put on here was messing with the impedance of the Fluence pickup. They sent me a prototype. I go, look, I love the guitar. It sounds magnificent, but there's something weird about the neck pickup. It's just as wimpier than my other guitars with Fluence pickups in it. So we did a little MacGyvering, and we figured out that it was the metal. And they said, well, we could either figure out which metal won't interfere with the pickup, or we could just use the parchment that we use for the pick guard around that. And I actually thought this looked even cooler. It looks more different. And so we decided to go with that. I thought it looked cool. And of course, there are those on the internet, because there are those on the internet, and we love all people on the internet. But sometimes people get a little caustic. And some people have been saying, what is that thing around the neck pickup? I hate that. And my response to that is very simple. When you get your signature guitar, you don't have to have one. Can you dig it? Or you could take this thing off and put whatever you want in there. You could put on, flannel material, if that makes you feel more conducive to your own personal lifestyle. Anyway, so with that, roasted maple neck. I really like the roasted maple neck that was on the Reverend Eastsider, but I wanted a little bit more depth, just a little bit more girth. And my 53 Tele at home, it doesn't have a huge neck on it. It's more similar to what this is. But I did like the compound radius thing. A lot of the guitars I play at Wildwood, or that I purchased from Wildwood, are Wildwood 10, so they have a 10-inch radius and 6105 frets, and that seems to really work for me. So this is actually a 10-inch radius down here, 14-inch radius up here with 6105 frets. Taller fret, not necessarily wider. I used to do jumbo frets on my old guitars, and then the methodology changed from, well, you want a taller fret, you don't necessarily want a wider and taller, because that wider contact area with the string can actually mess with your intonation. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So taller, not wider necessarily. Locking tuners, I always like locking tuners, and Reverends are very, very good. And the roasted maple neck, I think, really adds to the stability of the neck. This is just my own personal experience. Because they're roasted or torrefied, whatever you want to call them, I think it takes a lot more of the moisture out of the wood. So as a result, it doesn't move around as much. I live in Wisconsin, and when I'm traveling to, I was in, last year, the polar vortex, it was 20 below zero. And then I went down to Jamaica, played a couple of gigs down there, went back to the polar vortex, and the neck never moved. I didn't have to adjust the neck. It was good to go. So I like to refer to this as kind of a weaponized Telecaster. It kind of ergonomically is just dialed in every which way, shape, and form, and it's definitely serves a purpose that is not currently available. But for me, it's all about, I just wanted a guitar that did what I wanted it to do. So when I leave the house to do a tour over, which I've been doing now here, and I've been in the UK for about a week so far, I guess. And then before that, I was in mainland Europe, and I brought two guitars. I brought two Gristle Masters. This one is in the color we call Blucifer. See what I did there? And it's a transparent top, and then the back and sides are opaque. And then my affiliation with Wildwood, there's also a Wow Yellow. No, a Wow Red. I call it Party Red. It's kind of a Fiesta Red thing. And then there's a Pow Yellow, which is really cool looking. But Wildwood has done special runs, and we did one in Clockwork Orange. And that one's beautiful. I brought that one along. And then we're also doing one that's in transparent black with a bigger neck profile that's available at Wildwood, because on my old Fender Custom Shop guitars, I've got this big-ass 56 Strat V neck. And so I sent that neck to the Reverend guys, and they made it happen. So if you like a larger neck, like a really beefy neck profile, that's available with a black body, which is pretty cool. So anyways, that's the guitar. So I do have a signature amp with Koch amplifiers. That was not available for us today for this shoot, so I'm kind of doing what my fly rig would be. So if I have to fly in and I'm not sure what kind of amp I'm going to be using, there's a pedal that I've used for years. A buddy of mine named Tim Yarnig, who has he just goes by T Yarning. He's made pedals for years for a variety of people. We went to college together at Stevens Point, Wisconsin. We were guitar majors back in the day, as you do. And then he went to engineering school and got a delicious day job, as people do, who actually like to have houses and cars and stuff. And just kidding. Well, no, I'm really not. But anyway, he started messing around with making pedals, and he sent me he had a clean boost back in the day called the Luxury Drive, which was really nice. And I started using that, and then he made an overdrive for me that I really liked the circuit because it sounded really good at lower volumes. I could set up kind of a Fender style amp down pretty low and then hit that pedal, and it got a nice viscous tone at a lower volume. Then I had and we called that one the Diabolical Gristle Tone Manipulator, the DGTM for short, ladies and gentlemen. And then after a while, I was like, Tim, I love using that clean boost with the DGTM. What if we did a pedal that had both of the pedals in it? And he said, that sounds great. He goes, let's call it the Gristle King. So away we went. So that first iteration of the Gristle King probably goes back to 2000, I don't know, 3, 4, something like that. I think 3. And that's been my main go-to overdrive pedal. I messed around with different things because, I guess the guitar players are always messing around with different pedals. But this has been my main go-to device. I'll just show you. And this particular iteration, this is the third version. So the third version, if you're, and T-Rex made them for a short period of time, about 10 years ago. That affiliation ended, and Tim tweaked the design a little bit so that the overdrive has got a little bit more viscosity, and the clean sound is a little bit more transparent. Again, these are terms that are thrown around like whatever. Anyways, but it definitely does the trick. But we're having a problem because Tim has this day job. He also makes the Culmination pedal for Jeff Coleman, and Steve Lukather uses that pedal, and so he's inundated with orders. So he works his day job all during the day, and then he's strapped to like a bench at night making these damn pedals. So we found a way, actually through Fishman, we went back and forth with Fishman, tweaking the circuit so that they could be made in quantities. So now we have a Gristle King that's available through both my website and Tim's website. My website's just gregkoch.com, funnily enough. And so let me just kind of go through what it does. Again, I've got this deluxe reverb on about 4.5, and this is like one of those Tone Masters. Sounds pretty good. Now if I grab, that's just adding a little bit of that clean boost. Okay, so that's clean boost. Here's just the overdrive part. Now if I add them both together, and then back there. So it does an amazing job of sounding good with almost any amp. When I was in Jamaica and I had to go down and do that gig down there with a buddy of mine's band, I literally brought this pedal and I didn't know what kind of amps I requested. Like, well, if they have a twin or a super reverb or a deluxe, that'll be great. Well, the first day it was like a Frontman 100 transistor amp. And then the second day it was a JC 120. But I set the amp clean, used that pedal, and it more than did the job. So I go through phases. I'm definitely not one of these guys like, oh, I don't use any pedals, and if I do, I use one. I use whatever inspires me in the moment. So there's times where I've had an array of different stuff. But currently in my band, the Koch Marshall Trio, Toby Marshall plays Hammond B3. And that really fills up a lot of space. So I really don't need much. On my amp, I have a harmonic vibrato, and I've got a nice reverb, and I have gain stages that are similar to this pedal scenario. So I have my bass sound, my kind of cleanish boost that adds a little bit of foulness if I wanted to push the amp, and then my overdrive on top of that. That's basically what the amp does. So I'm currently in the model of where I just go out and, you know, if I use a pedal, I use this, and then just kind of work the rest of it for my grubby little mitts. But certainly over the years, I've used, you know, I used to use, always had some kind of Leslie simulator. Neo Instruments ventilator was always my favorite go-to device for doing Leslie type of stuff. But when you're playing with an organ player, are you going to use a Leslie impersonator? I don't think so. You're going to leave that at home for that particular iteration of the ensemble. So that's kind of what's going on. So as far as like picks and stuff, I just use these Primetone, Jim Dunlap Primetone 3 1.4 millimeters. They do the trick for me. I like the ones with the pointy edges. I just noticed over the years that the pointy edge just helps a little bit. And then string-wise, I use D'Addario XL. I use those NYXLs, 10 through 46. There was a time where I was using 11s, sets with 11s on the top, but you know, with the amount of traveling I do, and of course all the videos I do at Wildwood, you know, I'm doing 20 to 25 videos a day of various guitars that are coming from various different manufacturers, and they all have 10s on them. So I thought, it's weird for me to go from that and being so used to that and then having to grab a guitar with 11s on it just seems kind of counterproductive. So it's 10 through 46 all the way around, and that seems to do the job. And that's that. That's kind of my gear rundown for now, ladies and gentlemen. We are working on a P90 version of the Fluence pickups. I guess I can say that. It's, by the time this comes out, it'll be in motion, and then probably maybe another iteration of this Gristle Master guitar that will be fueled with said pickups with maybe a couple of minor alterations to be more conducive to that kind of a pickup scenario, if you know what I'm saying. But other than that, that's it. I mean, with signature gear, you know, as a fan over the years of watching different guitar players, I'm very cognizant of not uh, falling into the trap of, oh, he'll play whatever guitar people are paying money to play. That's not what it's about. I mean, you got to eat. There's no doubt. But so you got to make sure that the deal is conducive to everyone involved. But it was about ergonomically doing the things I wanted done to have gear. That's why when I'm touring, I bring this guitar, a cord, and my amp, or this guitar, my pedal, and whatever amp happens to be available. And then all the things that I need, ergonomically speaking, to take care of what I need to be inspired in the moment so I can just concentrate on playing is why I got affiliated with these folks. And they came through, and it's been mutually advantageous for one and all. Can you dig it? There you have it.